I hope everyone can hear me. But anyway, I'm not sure. I was looking for several people that might be here. And I think I'm short one, so I'll still talk about them. They can challenge me later. But anyway, back in the year 2002, there was something that happened here in the community, and I'll be honest about it. I've struggled with what I'm going to do today because, and I really can't explain why. But it was really a very special day for several people, one in particular. But on that day of October the 12th, 2002, we had the worst fire that we had ever had involving people out at SIU. And to been involved in that and seeing that materialize the way it materialized was a pretty miraculous day, to say the least, for lots of people. The call came in about a little shortly after 4 in the and we responded with 2 units from Edwardsville and the Glen Carbon unit, and was pretty much fully involved. And as we arrived on the scene, we were notified we had people possibly trapped. And so anytime you have that situation, it's really ramps things up pretty quickly. And so basically what happened is that myself, who is here, and Rich Dustman, who's my guest, and I was looking for Chancellor Werner, but he's not here. Oh, there he is. Okay. There's David. Okay. And so anyway, Chancellor Werner can probably tell you about as much about this as I can, only I had to definitely refresh my memory as to what actually happened and how it all evolved and so forth. But in doing so, while the individual engines were trying to get located and so forth, being volunteers, Rich and I were, if we weren't the first 2 volunteers on the scene, we were pretty close to it. And having heard the response for people possibly involved or trapped, we came from the opposite side of the building. And as I said, lots of fire, lots of smoke. And Rich, I don't think had his gear on. I did have my gear on. But anyway, we saw a picnic table and we drug the picnic table, and there may have been someone else help us as well. Drug a picnic table over to the building to the side of it. There was a balcony above, and not me, him, in good physical condition, grabbed hold and scaled up over the balcony and made entrance after he got his gear on into the apartment. And I went on around the building to secure a ladder to bring back around for egress purposes and hopefully rescue. And anyway, as the engine made its way, we accomplished what we tried to do. And we really didn't know exactly, what really all occurred and how it all occurred and so forth. And so, when you look back at things, you realize we were pretty fortunate. Everybody survived. That was the most important thing. And basically what we had firefighter Jim Agra and James Brooks and Bob Morgan were also involved in that entry into the fire scene. Rich, like I said, did not have any breathing apparatus on when he entered the structure. The other 3 individuals did have breathing apparatus on, and that really, really paid benefits, to say the least, for everybody, Rich included. So in the process of doing search and rescue, if you have lots of flame, that does help, but we really didn't have lots of flame, had lots of smoke and heat. And so in that process, it's lots of times you're on the floor searching with hands and so forth, trying to find people. Fortunately, the young student, I don't know if, I think he heard movement in that apartment and actually reached out and touched somebody on the leg. And as a result of that, why the rescue did actually occur, and they were able to bring him out of the structure. In that process, Rich, not having the SCBA on, had smoke issues, inhaling that and breathing and so forth. So he and the student eventually wound up in the hospital. Jim Acra also wound up with an injury, I believe, to his hand or his wrist or something, but fortunately survived. That's the important thing. And you can say, well, you know, why did this young man, what caused him? He actually was trying to rescue people as well, and did so. And he also, though, was overcome by smoke in that process. So when you, again, we had no idea, though, how many we actually had. So we had other teams in other parts of the building. And I know the team I had, we were in an opposite apartment, which was where the fire originated from. It was hot enough that it actually caused the concrete floor to open up in that apartment that was above, directly where the fire was. You know, well, you'd think, what about smoke alarms and that type thing? Well, the students that were in that bottom apartment, and this is, I tell you, this happens more than you would think it would happen. They had disabled the fire alarm. And I ran into that one other time out at Comfort Inn years ago. People don't want to be disturbed, or they don't want it to go off because somebody's going to come and check on it, and they might, like in the college, they may have fines and so forth. And if you have a home notification system and you have a false alarm go out, somebody shows up at your door or something, and that may cost you a few dollars because somebody made a trip out to check them. So I'll definitely say smoke detectors, gas, carbon monoxide, and when I say gas, natural gas, detectors are extremely important, makes no difference. Just be sure you locate them in the right place, and also be sure that you check the batteries or change batteries as they recommend. Lots of them are hardwired today, and that's fantastic. And they have battery backup with them. But whatever you do, don't disable them, and be sure and check them. Just don't ignore them. Go through that process. Every 6 months, you know, the saying is, when the time changes, that's time to check these things. And that's a good thing to follow. I have to admit, though, I'm not a very good follower of that rule. So even though I can criticize, I guess I'm criticizing myself as I do this. So anyway, because of the activity that occurred there, you know, the student's mother basically, she was just beside herself, to say the least. But her comment was that they went in the building knowing it was smoke filled and in flames to save a person they didn't know. And for that activity, the four were recognized by the state of Illinois, and they were recognized by the university and so forth. But when you're a volunteer, I guess, it's like, golly, did you sign up to do the same thing that career people do? And one of the things that's extremely important is training. And I will have to say, I think we had one of the best trained volunteer departments in the state, to be quite honest. And Glen Carbon's good, Jack, but I'll put my group up against Glen Carbon anytime. Not today, but back then. Because I trained lots of Glen Carbon people, and they were wild. Good department, don't misunderstand me, but they were wild and young. And you never knew what was going to come out of it. And you know, you just, well, that's a whole different story. But anyway, out of that recognition, Rich received the highest honor, Medal of Valor, and was recognized for doing so. And there were 3 of them honored with that Medal of Valor by the state fire marshal. And I very much, and I know the parents as well as the university, and I know our fire chiefs, all kinds of accolades. We're very appreciative of what was accomplished that day. And we've had other rescues as well. You know, years ago, there's fire publications. We had Chester Mickle and another career firefighter. Chester was a volunteer, but they were recognized for saving 87-year-old grandmother and a 3-year-old grandson. And you know, you just don't know when you're going to run into these situations. But I counted a privilege to have served with Dusty. I counted a privilege to have been part of the Edwardsville Fire Department as a volunteer. I served 36 years, and how many years did you serve, Dusty?
Almost 30.
Almost 30. So during that time, the changes in that whole system evolved. And in reading some articles, many of you, perhaps older, knew Football when he was chief. When he first came on the department, he kind of said, it's a situation whereby history has to change, and it did start to change. Training was kind of a non-existent thing on occasion, yeah, and it was kind of like learning by osmosis. Eventually, not only did the training improve, but the facilities improved, the equipment improved, and so on and so forth. And if you look, I think it's on the screen, that's one of the types of apparatus back in the 1800s and even into the 1900s that lots of departments utilized. And so what you have there is when you look at that, you kind of see the wings off to the side. Edwardsville had something similar. And when they bought it, they thought they really had something. And so they said, well, they had formed a department, I believe it was 1870. What is it? I wrote it down here. 1874. And so anyway, then they had to buy equipment. So they bought a piece of equipment similar to this. And so they decided they'd try it out. Well, what you have to do, those wings are actually things that you grab hold with your hands. And so you're operating a pump is what you're doing. And so anyway, they found out that about a minute and 30 seconds was about the maximum that a team, because it took probably 10 people, I would think, at a minimum, 5 on each side, to operate that piece of equipment. So for a minute and 30 seconds, they could operate that equipment. Well, you don't put a fire out if it's of any significant size in a minute and 30 seconds, just does not happen. So they realized, well, we've got to have more firefighters. And so as time evolved, equipment got better and so forth. Let's see if I can move this on to the next one. How do you do that, Masan? I'm sorry. Up and down?
Yeah.
Oh.
Which one are you, Carol?
Now, let's not go too. Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. All right. And this is another piece of equipment as well. This is horse drawn, as was the other one. But basically, again, it takes lots of manpower. And Edwardsville had something similar to this, and but it was pulled by men. Okay, you had to pull it to the fire scene as runners, right? In the same way with that piece of equipment I just showed you previously. And so competition was a big thing that occurred between departments because they would do different activities, running and so on and so forth. Everybody, I won't say everybody, but any of the larger departments had running teams and that kind of thing to competitions. And in reading and so forth, Collinsville, big competition. And I guess maybe that's where the K-Hawk Edwardsville competition started. I have no idea. But they evidently had a quite good team as well. And Litchfield was another one that was identified as having a real good team. So volunteer departments basically, though, were kind of became a community activity. And so it was kind of like a local social club as well. And I know I visited the department up in Monroe, Wisconsin, which was really a well-known department up in that area. And so I got there and they welcomed me very nicely. And they said, come on, come back. And I didn't know where we were going. Walked into the back. They had a bar in the back of the firehouse that would put any tavern to shame. Never seen anything like it. It was really unreal. And don't ask me how they got away with that, but all I know is what they had. And so, but volunteer fire service today has changed immensely. I was permitted and I went to school, became a fire instructor, and our volunteer department passed in its bylaws that everybody had to be a firefighter too. Firefighter 2 is required of every career firefighter. Every member of the Edwardsville department has to be a firefighter 2. And so the volunteers followed that as well. Excuse me. We didn't have 100%, but we had a large percentage. I'd say probably about 90% of our people. And we had 40 volunteers. So there were only 2 or 3 that were not certified firefighters. And a number of us were technicians, rescue technicians, as well as EMTs. And we even had a couple that were paramedics. So, and we had a relatively younger group of people because of the change in the fire service. Like Kubal said years ago, it really did start to change. And so you can be very proud of what you have here in Edwardsville. They're really, really top notch. And I think at times they wish they had volunteers again. But whether I like it or not, the union side and the volunteer side is pretty competitive. Okay. So the main reason, though, I brought everybody or wanted to make this presentation is because I want you all to know that I have a great deal of respect for this young man that's sitting here because he gave us all the time, not just that day, but all the time. And that's really, really great to be able to rely on someone like that and for that person to, commit themselves to that type of activity. So with that, I'd like everybody to give Rich Dustman a big hand for his. You like to say anything? Here, come up here.
not a hero. When I signed up to be a volunteer, that was a job. I took an oath for the city to protect the citizens everywhere, whether I'm driving down the street, whether it's my brother construction workers, which I was. I am a type A personality. That did help me that day, and it's helped me through life working. Trust. Jimmy Aker, I trusted him like my son. That day, we showed up in Darrell. We could see the orange glow in the sky going there. I just knew it was going to be bad. We got there, we ran up, the fire truck had a hard time pulling in. I was working at the university for housing off and on at that time in the university. I knew my way around that campus. They were a good employer. We saw these people on the balcony and they were screaming and hollering. Students were out there yelling. We ran over there, we let a couple girls down. There was people in there. Darrell asked, or somebody asked, is there anybody in the building? Anybody in the building? They said yes. Again, our thought process changed very quickly. We got those people down. I knew somebody had to go up there on the balcony. Jimmy Aker, Darrell brought the table over at the SIU cop. I did my best, got up there. They threw my gear up there. There was a man on the balcony still. He told me there was at least 2 people trapped in the building. I gave them the information real quick. They were standing there and they said, man, we got to get a ladder. You know what we need. And Jimmy, I lowered that guy down physically, which wasn't that big of a deal. I entered the door in the back, which is a sliding glass door, and started pounding on the floor with an axe or something, flashlight. I faintly thought I heard somebody. I came back out, got some air, went back in. I told whoever it is, come towards me, which we were trained. I was trained. I went through houses that practiced on Saturday. We all did. I did what I call a right-hand search, and I swept my leg out. On the 3rd time, I heard the guy say, and he put his hand on my foot, on my toe, and what I did, I flipped around, I drug him outside, laid him in. He said, I still have somebody. I set him off to the side. And by that time, the 3 guys were coming up the ladder. I lowered him down and I said, hey, there's somebody trapped. Those guys made entry. I could hear them back there. There was nothing I could do. I got on the radio. They were going to evacuate, which means they were going to pull out. And I told them we have 3 firefighters in the building and also at least 1 victim. And Mr. Karlachek said we continue to fight the fire. Upon hearing that, 3 young volunteers that were probably Boy Scouts made an interior attack through flames to make sure that we control the fire to give the rescue a chance, because the whole bottom was on fire. Those guys made entry, and all of a sudden I turned around, and one of the guys that went in the fire appeared on the outside of the ladder. It was Mr. Morgan. His air mask got knocked off in the search for a guy who was in the very back building. So a volunteer, Don Bernard, helped him break the window out, which is supposed to be unbreakable. And he came out on the side. He reappears in front of me. And at that time, I didn't know what was going on. They told me what had happened. I tried to enter, and about that time, I heard him and Jimmy Aker and Brooks, who was a big, strong shot putter, played football at East St. Louis. He came out, and they had this guy, and they were dragging him. Aker had hurt his shoulder, and they were trying to come out the glass door, which was shut. They had this guy and they couldn't get him out. I said, Brooks, come on, help me get him down. And Brooks told me, I'm shot, Dusty. I'm shot, meaning these guys were totally exhausted. I turned around and got the firefighter down the best I could. He went down the ladder. Aker had a thing, he went down. By that time, Ron Schraggy and Jim Anderson was coming up a ladder. Now we're just talking about a 10-foot ladder. We laid that guy down, but I turned around and it was like, we got to get going here. I'm thinking in my mind, I was in pretty good shape. I was pipelining at the time. I was a little younger than I am now. And I reached down, and the only thing I could do was to try to pick this guy up. I tried to do any kind of wrestling move or lift I could possibly do. I remember I looked at him, and on the third time I looked at him and I said, man, I said, he's a big guy. He's fat. He says, yes, I am. He woke back up. He passed out. On the third time I got down there and I asked for help. And somehow I got him up over the ladder and down the ladder. And of course, I was the last one down. I turned around, the whole freaking roof was on fire. I slid down the roof ladder and I just came down. My friend, Don Bernard, caught me, went and got help, and I went to the ambulance. They gave me some air, and that's the way it ended. And we all stood up that day, everything. And but if it wouldn't have been for training, it wouldn't be for trust. Jimmy Aker went on and went to Iraq, served in the Air Force over there, and he actually got a medal from England because he went under fire before the war ever started. But I had been around some of them younger volunteers and the older volunteers for a long time. And we had a trust, we had a bond. And I hate to say this, construction work a lot of times was the same. So, you know, but anyway, thank you very much. I have never been honored by a group like this since this happened. And the saddest time in my life is when I knew I fought my last fire. It really did.
Thanks, Dosi. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, sure.
We never question a fireman's physical abilities, but why did he die? Why didn't they get a horse to pull that thing instead of having a guy? Well, you know, it's a good question. Can I say an answer? This was all on certainly the innocent side. The city didn't have enough money to buy a horse, maybe a mule. I really can't explain it, but and sorry. Any other good questions? Thank you.
Absolutely. That wagon is empty. It looked like